I achieved 1,500 nanograms per deciliter testosterone levels naturally. Now, if you think I was gifted genetically, think again, right? This is how I looked like when I was 17 years old. An image is worth more than 1,000 words. Safe to say I went through puberty developing like a woman. Now, but I broke the fucking system, but it obviously took me years, right, of doing that stuff. So when it comes to androgen receptors, right, testosterone receptors, having high levels of testosterone isn't enough. What you want to do is you want that testosterone, right? So let's say this is our receptor, right? You want the testosterone to bind. If you have a shit ton of testosterone and you don't have enough testosterone receptors, or they're blocked, or they're not sensitive enough, or something, whatever it can be, this won't function, right? You want these to be sensitive, and you want many of them, right? Imagine a ship. If you have a shit ton of ships, right, and you have little ports that the ships can actually dock and leave the cargo, you're not going to have so much cargo, you know, left and whatever, you know what I mean, right? You're not going to have so much effect. So, how do you increase testosterone receptors? Now, your testosterone receptors are genetically predetermined, and you essentially get the genes from your mother's father, right? If you want to know whether you're like, you're going to be very androgenic or not, look at your mother's father. If he's a rat, if he's like a fucking pussy, then you're not going to be that. If he's a fucking barbarian, then you're in luck, right? Because you're going to be that too. But on my fucking example, on what I showed you just before, everything can be done, right? You can make epigenetic changes, you can change the genetic expression of your androgen receptors, you can increase their content, you can increase their sensitivity, and I'm going to show you how it's done, right? So let's talk about one thing. One thing that the androgen receptors need is something called a heat shock protein. That heat shock protein stabilizes that, right? Heat shock protein. That makes it so that it's stable enough so that the testosterone can enter. When are heat shock proteins released? When your body changes temperature, right? When you're doing exercise, when you're running, when you're sweating, even when you're doing cold exposure, when you're warming or cooling your body. But the absolute most amount of heat shock proteins are released, during sauna, right? So keep that in mind. That's very important. When you go to the sauna, you release a lot of heat shock proteins. And they kind of do get reused, but not fully, because they kind of get metabolized as well. So we need a healthy stream of them. So we need that to make them stable. That's number one. Now let's talk about one principle that androgen receptors have, right? That the androgen receptor has with testosterone. The more testosterone, that means, right, that implies the more androgen receptors, right? So everything that you do to increase your testosterone or your dihydrotestosterone, that will also increase the androgen receptors. Tremendous. But there are actually ways to put this on steroids, increase it even more. Now, the two mechanisms through which androgen receptors work is, number one, you can increase their density. Number two, you can increase their sensitivity. Density and sensitivity, right? What does that mean? That means the amount and how much in a given cell, right? Which cells have the most amount of androgen receptors? Your muscle cells, right? Your lean muscles. So naturally, if we want to increase this, right, we increase our muscle cells. The best way to do that, train extremely intensely, resistance training extremely intensely, and proper recovery, all the shit you've heard, right? Train and eat and all that stuff applies here, because the bigger you are, the more androgen receptors you have. So the more signaling there is from testosterone, right? The bigger you grow, the more facial hair, all that stuff, all the things you want. The masculine stuff, the fearlessness, the emotional stability, no depression, all that shit, right? Tremendous. Resistance training, where you focus on intensity, right? What I want you to do is, for the rest of your life, at least once a week, ideally once, twice, or 3 times, depending on whether you're bulking, cutting, whatever, like your life, basically. Go to the gym, do 6, 5, 6, 7, 8, how much your body allows you to. Sets where you're going to war, right? The more pain you endure, the more you grow. That's the law, right? Obviously, you can take that to an extreme and go every day and destroy your body and not recover. But if you do the recovery right, the more pain you endure during a set, the more you grow. The reason why you see all these cunts in the gym that are going and they're not changing 6 months after they look the same is because they go in there and they fuck around. How do I know? Because I was one of them. Right? So what I want you to do is go there and you're going to fucking war. You get up from the bench after the incline dumbbell bench press, whatever the fuck you want to do, and you feel like you've been hit with a grenade. right? You don't know where up and down is, you're red, you've got like veins on your shoulders at 15% body fat, right? Like tremendous, right? This is how I want you to train. This absolutely like pain. Your sets have to last like 1 to 2 minutes, right? Depending on the exercise. You do drop sets, you cheat in the end to get the maximum in, mind-muscle connection, you focus on that, just like train with deliberate intention. Destroy it. And you're gonna grow, right? So resistance training, focusing on intensity. Now let's talk about something else. Let's talk about ejaculation frequency, right? I'm gonna write it down. Reduced ejaculation frequency. Now, when you ejaculate, what essentially happens is for 24 hours, especially in the amygdala, especially in the center of the brain which controls fear, you reduce the androgen receptor quantity. Now, if you do it more than once, if you do it once, twice, 3 times in a day, that effect actually becomes 72 hours. All that to say, because these are studies, right? So all that to say, the more you do it, the more the effect and the graver it is. And it's very logical, right? Think about like a time where you haven't, ejaculated for like a week, right? 7 days. On that 7th day, or even on the 5th day or 7th, on the 7th day, it's most extreme because you actually have an increase of testosterone. You have a spike of testosterone after the 7th day. But after like 2 or 3 days, you become a different person, right? Between day 7 and 14, you're a barbarian, right? You don't want people to be on you. When you're driving, you would like get out of the car and fucking hit him with a bat, like a baseball bat. You know what I mean? Like that's how you feel. You're fearless. The world is your playground. So use this information how you want, right? Do with it what you may. Now, do I believe that men should avoid ejaculation altogether? I don't think so, because in the end, like life is to be enjoyed. Already we don't pursue these pleasures. Already we renounce, whatever, video games, porn, fucking, you know what I mean? Like alcohol, all these things, junk food, sugar. Already we're very like disciplined. Let's enjoy life for once, right? Let's fucking have sex. Do you know what I mean? So do with that what you may. What I would recommend is never again masturbate in your life unless literally you can't do anything. Unless you're literally fucking paralyzed and you can't think, you can't sleep, nothing. Then, it's understandable, because then it's like actually the effects are worse. But that's what you want to do. Of course, Mike Tyson and Steve Jobs, these guys, they practiced that shit and they were the best. But bro, like what about, what's his name? Genghis Khan. Do you think Genghis Khan did this shit? And yet he was a fucking barbarian. Do you know what I mean? So do with that what you may. Now, the third way to do this is, the third way to increase your density of androgen receptors is through this compound called L-carnitine, right? Now, precisely, when you want to supplement this, the best one is called acetyl L-carnitine, right? So, where is L-carnitine found in foods? Because obviously the most bioavailable, sources of L-carnitine is going to be food. It's found in red meat. It's the absolute best. Nothing comes close. So, what I want you to do is every single day I want you to eat red meat. Minimum 250 grams. If you can eat half a kilogram, which is a pound, that would be tremendous. In whichever form you want. If you're sick of making burger patties and you want to put it into a burrito, fuck it, just take the L, eat the burrito. Red meat is the best thing. Steaks, ground beef, I recommend ground beef because it's cheap. And also you get a lot of the cartilage because they grind some stuff in there like fucking cartilage. But that's good. Like that cartilage, the collagen, whatever the fuck, that's good. What about supplementation? Well, obviously, I fucking have it. This is the most expensive one, but it's also the most bioavailable one. It's not as bioavailable as the one in red meat, but acetyl L-carnitine, right? What's the protocol here? What I recommend is 2 grams per day, split into 2 doses. So the first dose you take on an empty stomach. You take it in the morning. Why is that? Because one of the things it does, this is in my opinion, one of the most underrated supplements on the market. One of the things this does, it actually upregulates your metabolism of fats, of fatty acids. It makes sure that your body produces more acetyl-CoA from fatty acids. It increases your body's efficiency of using fat for fuel. So making you more fat adapted. Tremendous, especially when you're on a cut. And if you're doing intermittent fasting like me for like 20 hours a day or 16 or 24 hours, whatever, depending, this is amazing. So I want you to take this. If you do decide to buy it, it's expensive. I want you to take this every single day in the morning. It's tremendous. It's going to make you produce more acetyl-CoA. Remember, acetyl-CoA makes cholesterol, which makes testosterone, and 85% of your total testosterone production is from the liver, through the synthesis of acetyl-CoA, cholesterol from acetyl-CoA. So the more acetyl-CoA you have, especially on a cut, when you're relying mainly on body fat, the more testosterone you're going to make. And you know, when you don't take this shit, even if you do take this shit, but like when you don't take this shit even more, you don't really have that much libido. You don't really have that much like activity and this like, fuck, let's get it done, fearlessness. I'm going to get this shit done and fuck it. We'll think about it later, the consequence. You don't have that. You want that. So tremendous supplement. Remember, 2,000 milligrams, so that's 2 grams per day. Once with food, the second time, and the first time on an empty stomach with some water. Tremendous, right? Okay. So resistance training, ejaculation frequency, L-carnitine. Another long-term way to do this is epigenetics. When you induce metabolic stress in a long term, right? Because this is a very long-term strategy, increasing the density. Sensitivity is very short-term. It's acute, right? This is long-term. So when you induce metabolic stress, what you're essentially doing is you're making your body become more adapted to the stressful environment by upregulating this whole system, upregulating the androgen receptors, testosterone. So remember the 6 ways to induce metabolic stress, the 6 best ways. Very intense resistance training, very intense sprinting or high intensity training, sauna, right? The longer you're in there, the better. Cold exposure, right? Ice baths, cold showers, whatever. Intermittent fasting and CO2 retention, right? Wim Hof breathing methods where you essentially alkalize your body and then you exhale and then you become very acidic with CO2 concentrations. That's very metabolically stressful. So 6 best ways. Remember, metabolic stress, this in my opinion is the key to all this, to this entire thing. This is what I did. When I realized this, I started just doing this every day as much as I can without overloading it. And I saw results very quickly, right? You know, libido, everything, like everything. Now, density, we've covered density, right? So resistance training, very intense, decreased ejaculation frequency, acetyl L-carnitine, but also the L-carnitine present in meat, which is very bioavailable, in red meat, and metabolic stress through epigenetics. Let me give you another value bomb, right? I want you to, this is very niche, right? This is extremely fucking niche. But the way your body actually makes epigenetic changes is through a process called methylation. Also, you know, the metabolism of catecholamines like dopamine, like adrenaline, like these things, right? There's a third one which I'm forgetting, epinephrine, these things. They're essentially metabolized and obviously epigenetic changes through this compound called, through this process called methylation. Now, how do you, is there any way to actually increase this? Is there any way to make your metabolic changes better, to make them more efficient, more faster? There is. Now, there's a complex of B vitamins, especially the methylized ones, which will increase that. These are expensive supplements. This is very niche, right? This is, you do this once you're already doing a shit ton of resistance training, once you're already, you know, eating a shit ton of vitamin D, and your vitamin D level is like 70 nanomole per whatever, milliliter, whatever the fuck it is. But one of them is trimethylglycine, right? TMG, trimethylglycine, also called betaine, right? Another one is methylfolate, right? And another one is, this is actually methylcobalamin, but yeah, methyl B12. But all these are essentially B complex vitamins in their methylized versions. That's why they're a bit more expensive. But yeah, when you do that, you essentially increase your catecholamine metabolism, which means you're going to become less stressful, you sleep better, but also you actually increase the amount of metabolic changes that your body is doing. And about 40% of people actually have a deficiency in this through a mutation of an enzyme, which causes your body to make less of it through its compound. So these 3 things I told you is the game changer, right? If you're very advanced, that's what I want you to do. This is a value bomb. This is for all of you who want that extra step, who are already doing it, but you want even more. You want to be the fucking best. This is what you buy. Okay, done. Epigenetic changes. Now let's talk about sensitivity. So there are certain activities you can do which actually will increase the sensitivity of your androgen receptors acutely. That is for a short period of time, short term, right? And let's talk about two things already. So caffeine will do that, right? Now I always say, be mindful of it. Don't take it after 12 at noon. Don't take more than 200, 300 milligrams, right? 200 I think is the optimum because that won't disturb your sleep. If you really need to get something done, take 300. But that's caffeine. Now, the second one is capsaicin. What is capsaicin? It's the compound present in very spicy foods, right? What I like to do is I like to put some Tabasco on my omelets, on my meats and stuff. It adds taste, but it also, capsaicin, tremendous. We want that. Like our body, when it detects capsaicin, it upregulates androgen receptors very acutely, very short term, right? Sensitivity. Now, let's talk about one more thing. And that is, let's say, the main mechanism here. Also, by the way, let me say, intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting will actually increase your sensitivity to androgens, so your androgen receptor sensitivity, very acutely, especially once you eat. Once you eat, it increases it by 80%, so you have 180% of the baseline, okay? But every single hormone that is like stressful, right? Whether it's cortisol, whether it's adrenaline, right? Whether it's insulin, right? Anabolic hormone, whether it's IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor 1, whether it's testosterone. Spikes in this hormone will actually spike the sensitivity of the androgen receptors over a couple of hours, okay? So if you spike your insulin, you're going to spike also the sensitivity of your androgen receptors. If you eat a big meal after you fasted, insulin spikes, also your androgen receptor sensitivity spikes. When you spike these hormones, right, testosterone, adrenaline or epinephrine, cortisol, that's the stress hormone, when you spike it, right, for example, when you're doing a very intense workout. IGF-1, what is IGF-1? It's insulin-like growth factor 1. It's a peptide, which your body releases, for example, when you release growth hormone, right, so sleep well, go to bed fasted, all that stuff. Intermittent fasting also increases growth hormone. When you eat a lot of proteins will actually make this release more of this, right? Obviously spikes in testosterone, right? Spikes in adrenaline, cortisol, spikes in insulin. These things will actually acutely increase the sensitivity of your androgen receptors. Sometimes for 3 hours, sometimes for 24 hours, right? Sometimes for a couple hours. So this is basically the mechanism. All right, we're done. So there's two ways to do this. You can either increase the density. This is a very long-term strategy through building more muscles, through resistance training, epigenetic changes, right? Through inducing metabolic stress, which will increase the density and the quantity. This compound called L-carnitine, either it's in the form of red meat or it's in the form of acetyl-carnitine. You can take this on an empty stomach or with carbohydrates. When you're doing a fast, take it on an empty stomach, decreasing the ejaculation frequency, as well as increasing the sensitivity. And you can do this through using caffeine, through implementing this this compound called capsaicin, which is present in spicy foods, through intermittent fasting, and especially in the refeeding window, right? That's a very big acute spike in the sensitivity, as well as spikes in hormones such as testosterone, IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor 1, cortisol, adrenaline, and insulin. And this is how it's done, right? This is how you increase the number of androgen receptors so that the increased testosterone, which you actually induce, will have an effect, right? Done. So for all you killers that are left, so if this resonates with you, if this is the type of content that you need because you need your life changed, then well, first of all, subscribe to the channel, because obviously content like this, it's shadow banned. That's not a fucking I haven't invented America here, right? But also, if you want to work with me one-to-one, there's a link below. It's a link to my calendar. You can book like 30 minutes with me. We're going to get to know each other. It's basically like, it's free. This is sort of like an onboarding call, right? We're getting to know each other. We're going to ask each other a couple of questions. Now, if we vibe, I'm going to make you an offer. If I see certain characteristics that I require to help you achieve this thing, right? To design the lifestyle in such a way where, if you're sick and tired of just fucking just looking through the internet and not knowing what works, what doesn't, I'm going to help you with it, because I've spent years of my life and I'm still researching this shit every single day. So if that speaks to you, below is the link. We're going to talk about, mainly biochemistry such as this, because obviously biochemistry drives behavior, but also we can talk about psychology, we can talk about spirituality. So yeah, hit me up. Anyways, I'll see you next time.